So just to introduce myself, hello, my name's Helen Bevan, and my job title is Chief Transformation Officer. And I work for the National Health Service in England in a national role. I support large-scale change. And I'm a doctor, but I'm a doctor of social science. And the world that I live in is one of thinking, how can we make positive change and improvements happen on a very big scale? And delighted to be part of ICGRx this morning. And I've got a few thoughts I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen. What I'm also going to do is afterwards, I'm going to tweet the link. So you'll be able to download all these slides straight away. So let's get going. So when I spoke to Raj, and Raj, would you give a talk to start the summit? I said, absolutely. What do you want me to talk about? And Raj said, I'd like you to talk about how we move forward together as students, professionals, patients, and societies. And I thought, you know what? Actually, what we're talking about here is about power. And I think everything that we're going to talk about today in this open access virtual ground round is actually about the changes that we want to make and how we take the power to do that. And I can see, that many of you taking part today are clinical students. And very often it feels, well, I've got no power to change anything. I'm right at the bottom of the pecking order. But actually, all of us have got power and all of us can take it. So again, when Raj said to me, about this topic, it reminded me of this quote by Rebecca Solnit, and she's talking about social movements. And she says, when we talk of social change, we talk of movements, a world that suggests vast groups of people walking together, leaving behind one way and traveling towards another. And when we think about the COVID-19 pandemic and our response to it and the kind of world that we want in the future, I think it's highly relevant, thinking about this title, how we move forward together as students, professionals, patients, and society. So at the heart of this, I think, is the idea of power. And think about the world that you live in, you work in, you study in. I think there's a big conflict going on between a world which is what I'd call old power and new power.
Absolutely, Helen. Can we share the slides, Helen?
Yeah, are they not sharing? They're sharing according to me.
Not just yet. If we can try that again.
Yeah, let's try
Great.
again. So
they're sharing now.
Stop sharing. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to start again. Not with the talk, with the sharing. Just bear with me a second. Right. Share screen.
Great, and please, and we will have, of course, there's the student response to the pandemic beginning at 11:30. So we will obviously, there'll be maybe a 1 or 2 minute delay on that, but we cannot miss taking the power to change. So I think we have the slides now.
Can you see the slides now? Is
yes,
that okay?
We can. Yeah, we can, and we will continue till 11:30 and then move on to the next session. Thanks so much, Helen. Really looking forward to the slides and, of course, your inspirations.
Yeah, great. So we talked about. I just talked about that quote from Rebecca Solnit. So, we're in a world where we need to think differently about power. And very often, the world that we live in and we work in and study in is an old power world. And when we talk about old power, it's about formal authority in organizations and systems. It's like a currency. The people with the power, the most senior clinicians, the people that run the health and care system, the politicians, they have got formal authority. This kind of authority is held by a few people, and they push it down in our organizations and systems. We're commanded to do things. You have to do that because it's the clinical protocol. You've got to do that because it's the performance target. You've got to do that because it's the quality standard. And old power is closed. So if I'm the leader of a hospital system and I'm working with a local community, I can't command them to do anything because my power ends at the door of my organization. And old power is largely about transactions. It's about organizations and systems and structures and holding people to account. Okay, let's contrast that with new power. New power is like a current and energy that happens when many people come together with a common purpose. And the more people that engage in new power, the more power we have. And we can pull it into our organizations and systems. We can, it's shared, it's open. Anybody that believes in our cause or wants to be part of our movement, can be part of it. And the more people, the more power we have. And new power is based on relationships. Okay, it's people are engaging because they want to and not because they have to. So let's think about this in the context, first of all, of Ground Round. Okay, very often the kind of formal teaching in auditoriums that we do, as part of the Grand Round system is part of the old power system. What we're doing today with our open access virtual Ground Round, this is about new power. Every one of us is here today because we want to be, because it matters to us. We're part of an incredible global movement. And what I'd say, we're in a world where if we want to change things, if we want better health and healthcare, better systems in the future, we have to be able to work with both old power and new power. Okay, old power and new power is a very interesting idea when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic. You can see both playing out. So if we think about this, let's think about this in terms of metaphor. Metaphors are when you compare two things, one with the other. So many of the metaphors around COVID-19 are old power metaphors. We talk about the war or the fight or the battle against COVID-19. And we talk about a lot of metaphors that are like crime, criminal ones, lockdown, curfew, social isolation, people that don't obey the rules being transgressors. When we talk about our clinical colleagues, and the students that are playing critical clinical roles, we talk about them as superheroes, troops in battle, being the front line. We talk about battening down, and those kind of metaphors around COVID are about command and control and about top-down leadership. Okay, let's think about new power metaphors for COVID. Journey, challenges, hopeful destination. Coming together with shared purpose, building, forging, reconstructing, renewal. Lots of people coming together, playing their part. So, we talk about interdependence. So, interdependence means lots of people doing their own, playing their own critical role, but we're dependent on other people. And it's about communities that are resilient and connected. And what I'd say, again, we have to work with both kinds of power, but I think that the future is more and more about new power in an old power world. And for every one of us, that wants to be part of that new power world, we need to build our own agency. And agency is how we build our own power to make a difference, both individually and collectively. And I would say that today's summit is all about agency. It's about taking that power together to make a positive difference. And here's an example of agency, shifting power in the system. And this comes from Jönköping in Sweden. And in Jönköping, they have a living library. So in the same way when you have a library, a book library, you can borrow books for learning. In Jönköping, they have a living library. And this is a group of patient leaders, people with lived experience. And like the situation in England, in Sweden, there's been this huge switch during the COVID pandemic towards virtual consultations. But in most places, we're teaching the clinicians or supporting clinicians to go to virtual, and we're just expecting the patients to kind of take it on board and learn how to do it. In Sweden, they're actually shifting the power by having the people with lived experience from the living libraries supporting other patients to feel confident and positive about moving to virtual. That's shifting power. So, what I would say is when we think about the future, and hopefully many of you, those of you that are still in training will be the leaders of the future. And I'd say our post-COVID future, okay, well, maybe there isn't a post-COVID future, because actually, when we think about COVID, it's not just a pandemic, it's endemic. It's with us forever and we've got to get used to it. But in this world beyond the current phase of where we are with COVID-19, I'd say that the people and the leaders who are going to succeed are the ones who can work in new power way as well as old power ways. And that's about how we think as clinicians, how we think as leaders, how we build our networks and connections in the same way that we are today. How information flows. Social networking evidence tells us that if you want to make change happen, you want to spread ideas for influence, and if you do it in new power ways, like we are today, through informal influence, through social media, by coming together virtually, okay, it takes 4 times less people to influence for change than it does through doing old power and trying to push it down through a system. So this is about how taking new power ways of making change happen and new power ways of building our skills and the kind of skills that we need to work in new power ways through influence and networks and connection. And today is a day where we're going to focus on both kinds, but think particularly about how you can work in new power ways. So, what next? This is my final slide. And thinking around this, how can we come together to make change happen? Whether we're students, whether we're clinicians in training, whether we're health and care professionals, or patients, or community leaders, or people who are got formal leadership roles in the system. What I'd say is what this quote says. This is from a play called Pride, and Joe, this character in Pride, says, we're marching, we're moving forward together, but whether we march with banners or without, the important thing is that we all come together, all of us. And that's what this thing has been about from the beginning. And that is absolutely how it's going to end. Together, us united. And I think today and this summit and ICGRx is a beautiful opportunity to do that. So I wish you a fantastic day of learning and collaboration. And I look forward to being part of the day as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Helen. I think, as always, there's just so many pearls of wisdom that we can all take forward. And as you say, this isn't just about one profession, one group of people. This is about, all of us together, united. So thank you so much again for joining us today and for helping launch this summit. We hope you'll continue to interact with the delegates from around the world on the platform. And thank you so much again.
It's a pleasure, Raj. And look forward to being part of the day.